So transitioning over to United, another team probably looking to compete in the top four. They've brought in Tyrell Malacia. I like his game. I don't know if he's ready to start right away. A lot of people think he is. A lot of people, have him starting immediately at left back. I just think he'll have to get adjusted a little bit just because of his size. Understanding the Premier League physicality, it's a little different game, but he definitely offers more going forward than um Tellez for sure. Luke Shaw, I like Luke Shaw going forward. Last year wasn't the best year for him, but I think this year he'll earn a spot as a starter for sure. And then another guy I was looking at that's kind of been playing well for them in the preseason is Martial. With the Ronaldo situation going on, I think Martial could, definitely get some minutes leading the front line. Um, it's been a tough period for Martial just the last couple years, man. Like he has all the talent. It's really just about putting consistency and putting in the motivating performances because he'll play well in certain games and other games he'll look like he just doesn't want it and he's just isolated and not really providing us with much. So we'll have to see how the Ronaldo situation plays out. Part of me doesn't really feel too interested with the idea of Ronaldo returning. Obviously we see a bunch of teams are just kind of shying away or just, saying like we don't want Ronaldo. He's not really a guy that, we see fitting in our lineup. Saw that with Bayern Munich. And then Chelsea obviously not interested. So it looks like Ronaldo could return if that's, going to be his only option. I don't know. That could really affect the development of some of our younger players. I think when United made their biggest steps forward was under Ole. When Ole had a bunch of young players that they were just getting game time and playing, you saw Fred revitalized under Ole. Um, and they've also brought in Christian Eriksen. Um, Great story, honestly, with Eriksen. Like
Yeah,
it's
no doubt.
it's insane like what he's done. Landing a 3-year deal with United after everything that he's been through since the Euros is crazy. The fact that he was even able to come back and play in the Premier League last year and do what he did with Brentford was really impressive, and that's just a testament to his perseverance with that whole situation. Lissandro Martinez, man, like I like him a lot. Like there's a lot of guys that United bring in that I'm just like skeptical on, but I think him and his ball playing ability and his pace is like second to none. Like I don't see many center backs with the ability to pick out passes like he's picked out, and just having the vision. Like I don't really see that, and that's a really big part of his game. Obviously, Eric Ten Hag is one of his guys last year, so he could definitely slot in right away to play for United, just because of his pace and the options he provides even going forward. The back line is a little iffy outside of that though, because you have obviously still going to be the captain in Harry Maguire, and you have Varane, who as another guy that big name, but he gets injured a lot. And even when he's on the field, like the performances are kind of iffy with Varane, just because I don't think he's really gotten acclimated to the league yet. He makes a lot of silly mistakes. Even at Real Madrid, he's made silly mistakes before. So that's just the thing with him. Something we have to think about. And I don't know if they still have plans for Bailly, but I'd like to see Bailly play a little bit more.
Mhm.
Um, I just like Bailly's like physicality. Just to bring a different dynamic than any center back we have. At times, he looked like our best center back last year. Not saying much though, but like still,
Yeah, no, you need something.
yeah. Um, and then obviously the young situation is a little interesting. Um, man, I don't know how to feel about it. Like, I don't know if they should pursue it in terms of the personal discussions with the personal terms and that, because it seems like he's really set on staying at Barcelona. If it's a situation where they have no choice but to sell him with all the additions that they've made, I'd be happy to have him, but just under these circumstances, like I'm not too sure because it seems forced. Like I've told you personally, like I just think it seems forced. Bringing in a guy like De Jong that great player, but if he doesn't want to be here, a part of the project, I mean, you can't really like expect too much for him. But I'd love to have him here, honestly. Like he's a great player. And maybe he finds some form with Donny again. Like maybe Donny features more. Like obviously Pogba's just left, Lingard, of course. So maybe some things change in the midfield this year. Um, I just hope they're ready to maybe not compete with City or Liverpool or any of that. I just want them to return to their 2020 like 2021-ish form where second place in the league, competing and just not really putting in disappointing performances. Like a few times last year where United just looked like terrible, like getting destroyed, and it might not even shown up on the scoreline. Like obviously we lost to Liverpool like by a lot, lost to teams by a lot, but like lost to Watford by a lot, but like it's the performances sometimes even tell more than the scoreline. So as long as they play passionate and they look like they're ready, I'm most interested to see that and just keeping the players on the field that deserve it.
No, totally. Yeah. There's like a couple of things with United. So like even when they were really good, I mean, they have had a lot of talent, and they would buy the best players and stuff like that. But like the leadership in the locker room was always really good. Like you had guys like Rooney. I mean, obviously Sir Alex Ferguson was like the leader, but you need players to lead also. And you had like the Neville brothers, Ruben Nistelrooy, Rooney, Ronaldo, Paul Scholes. Like you had guys that Rio Ferdinand, like guys that were like big vocal leaders that held everybody accountable and stuff. And they haven't really had that in like ages. And bringing Ronaldo in, like I actually thought like Ronaldo saved them
Mm-hmm.
several times last year. Like if I get like the style, it's not like the perfect fit, and like he might hinder some of the youth development. But I mean, if you just look at some of those games, like they might have finished with like 9 to 12 less points without him last year. But they do need to have a transition where if he does leave this summer, like you need to have something in place where you can not only not lose those points this season, but improve your standing in the league. And you brought up some of the names like Sandro Martinez, Malacia from Feyenoord, I think, and they're trying to get De Jong. I actually think that they should get De Jong, even if he doesn't want to be here, because once he's here and you have him under contract, like he's more of a professional in my opinion than like Pogba. Like there's a lot of rumors about Pogba where he would kind of float in and out of games, and like he wasn't always, and I've kind of defended Pogba because I think he's like gets unfairly criticized for reasons that have nothing to do with football. But with De Jong, I think once he's here, like you just can't pass up on that level of talent, and he just elevates your team to a different level. And he's only 25. It's not like
Yeah.
you're like debating on his like 30. Should we bring him in? Blah blah blah. But I think he doesn't necessarily want to be there. I always have this theory that you kind of follow like not only what they say in the media, but like what they post and stuff. And I think I said this in our group chat a couple of times, but if you just go on his Instagram, if you go on his girlfriend's Instagram, like they don't want to leave. It's like they're even yesterday, like they're all on this like yacht with like Memphis Depay, and they're just enjoying like the Barcelona weather and stuff. And I'm like, I just don't see that as like somebody that's dying to go to Manchester where it's like freezing cold 8 months out of the year. Those personal factors for me are big. And so but even with all that said, I think De Jong is the guy that you still have to roll the dice with, because the great equalizer sometimes in the Premier League from like the top teams to the bottom teams is the strength of your midfield. And you saw United play down to their competition because they were playing against other teams like Leeds or Brighton, or even Newcastle late in the year that had pretty good midfields, and like they would outplay United's midfield pretty consistently. And United wouldn't be able to win these games just because didn't have enough control of the ball. So if they can strengthen their midfield with a guy like De Jong and put Bruno in like a sole attacking role instead of having some defensive responsibilities and stuff like that, I think that's going to be their key this year. Because you watch this more than I did. Just the midfield sometimes when you have McTominay and Fred playing together, there's just not a lot of like creativity, and there's not a lot of like somebody that's just going to impose their will in the midfield. So I'm curious to see how that works this year.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think with Ten Hag, the likelihood of seeing a pairing of McTominay and Fred will just lessen. I think we're going to see Fred feature a little bit more. And Fred, might have been a top 3 player for United last year. I don't think you can really argue that because of
You think
how.
so? I didn't watch him as much as you did. Like I would watch like the big games, but who would you say would be the top 3?
Top 3, honestly, to me, you got to have Ronaldo, you got to have Fred, and probably De Gea. He saves us. So
Yeah, he bounced back really well this year.
yeah,
I thought that didn't get talked about enough. Is that uh it looked like there for a second the wheels are starting to fall off,
yep.
and that's why they brought in Henderson. But I think really like what they've been missing is like a real central defensive midfielder. Like if you look at like Fernandinho, Fabinho, Calvin Phillips coming in, like guys that just, they're just super physical and they're like super intelligent. It can cover up a lot of holes within your defense. And I think the reason why you see Maguire and Varane and all these guys getting exposed so much is that their midfield was so imbalanced last year that they would be exposed to more scoring opportunities. And when you're exposed to more scoring opportunities from the other team, you're just going to not win as many games. If you remember those Chelsea teams with Mourinho, like way back in the day, they had like Makalele as their central defensive midfielder, and then they'd have Terry and Cavarlo, I think, or some Portuguese player.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing was that their defense was so good because the midfield would take care of everything in front of Terry, and if the ball just so happened to get by the midfield, then you have like a world-class goalkeeper and like 2 world-class center backs. So they don't have those world-class center backs right now, but at the very least, you need to get a defensive midfielder in there that is super intelligent and can play the ball. And I just don't know if they have that yet, but we'll see.
That is true. I've heard some things like about Lissandro Martinez. He might be able to play in the midfield as well. I'm not sure. I
Yeah, he
think,
can play both.
yeah,
Like he's played both before. They didn't play him as much, I don't think, in the midfield because they had who was it? Edson Alvarez would play that role.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious to see if they put him there because I think really more than anything, that's what they're missing. Because like Pogba is not that type of player.
No.
Bruno is basically like a 4th attacker. He just kind of just doesn't care for the defensive side of the equation. And then Fred and McTominay, like you think McTominay would be that guy, but we've seen him some games look amazing and then some other games not look, like that great, just out of his element a little bit. But I'm curious about United because I want to get your opinion on this too, because I like kind of what they're doing, but I'm still a little skeptical because it felt for years like it was being run like an old boys club where they would have the same people in charge and they hire internally and they want to keep like United legend, the coaching staff and all this stuff. And for me, like I thought it got like really stale, and I thought like they needed to hire somebody with like new ideas, outside of the club that just can like revitalize that. Because I know Liverpool had this problem for years where they kept trying to bring in old Liverpool players as managers. Like the ownership situation was weird, but it just felt like too kind of stale. Then you bring in somebody like Klopp that's like, super intense, and like he sold like half the squad within a year and a half or whatever. Like I think Ten Hag is like the perfect guy for that, but they have to let him. They have to let him cook basically. I just don't want the board or whoever to get involved and be like, you have to have these guys in your coaching staff, or you have to sign these specific type of players, because I think it'll go pretty terribly if they do that. But if they just let him do what he does, I mean, I think he could probably be somewhat of a version of what Klopp was to Liverpool. Because I mean, it wasn't that long ago Liverpool were finishing like 8th in the Premier League, like pretty consistently.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, man, United have had so many managers. Like, I feel Mourinho kind of brought that impact to United a little bit, where it was like he knew what he wanted, and he kind of came to a point where he butt heads with the higher ups. He brought in some really good players, but then ultimately, like, just it didn't work out. And he even brought him to second, but it just felt like it didn't feel like natural. No matter how good we were, it just didn't feel like we were, in cohesion. And you see him speaking publicly about it after he left, just like, United, like, I gave him a trophy and like they didn't appreciate it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just one of those things. I think United are going through a little bit of a transition, committing to it now. I feel because um after 2013, man, they brought in Moyes. I feel like Moyes, was a guy that just was an internal hire in a sense, because was a probably recommended by Fergie,
Mhm.
and didn't really do too much for us with bringing in his former players in like Fellaini, and just like it kind of that kind of held us back a little bit. And Van Gaal, another guy, Van Gaal, like he was another guy that's honest about United and their management, kind of saying United are a commercial club.
Yeah.
I don't think you can disagree with that really, because over the last few years, that's really much of what's been going for us. Um, and Van Gaal is another guy. Yeah, he's honest. Can't really switch him up. I like those type of managers. At first, I didn't really like how Mourinho was, or Van Gaal were, but like over time, I kind of like understood like you need that in your club, to kind of change the way and just change the adaptation. You don't really need to do that. You didn't need to do that at City. City have always, they're kind of a newly ran club, so they kind of already had it. But like the Liverpool example that you bring up, like they needed that, and that's what Klopp brought them. They were so close with Brendan Rodgers at Liverpool, they maybe held on to that a little bit too long, and Klopp was the guy that just set it straight. Like every signing Klopp has made, pretty much, has turned out well for the most part. And usually when he spends big, it goes well. They spent big on Van Dijk. It went well. Even when they spent small on a guy like Robertson, who nobody knew about when they bought him, really. It goes
Yeah, it was
well.
a big bargain signing. It was like, I
Yeah,
think it was only like 9 million or something like that.
exactly. So like it's really gone well. That's why I kind of have hope for when they spend big on a guy like Darwin Nunez, for example. I think they know what they want to do with him. So I like how Liverpool are. Oh, yeah, I like how Liverpool are ran. And I hope United kind of understand, like, we don't need to stick to our principles from back in the day. Hold on. Oh, I am lagging. Oh shit.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah, my bad. My Wi-Fi just turned off randomly. But what was I saying? So what was the last part you heard that I said?
Well, you're talking about Liverpool, and normally when they spend big.
Normally when they spend big, it comes with a purpose. So I think they're intentional about what they're doing with bringing in Darwin Nunez. So I have hope that eventually it could come good for them. And yeah, like I was saying, man, like I hope United kind of understand that we don't need to stick to our former principles. I think it's important to be able to adapt. It's not the times of United anymore where we are just year in year out we had the right formula. We don't have that anymore. Like we have to adapt. We have to understand that like we can't keep living in the past with our whole principles. We gotta change it up. We gotta let these managers control, what they can control. I think I read somewhere that Fergie he didn't have the greatest start at United, but he was backed, and that's what led to his longevity here with the club. So like with that situation, it was an adaptation. So I think you got to adapt to the times, understand where we're at, be critical. um some guys at United don't really deserve to be wearing a United shirt, if we're being honest, over the years. So
Yeah.
you just got to be honest with everything. And if guys that don't deserve to play, guys that shouldn't be on the field, shouldn't be on the field. That's just how it's got to be. And another thing you brought up, you're bringing up Ronaldo in terms of him probably saving us 9 to 12 points, right?
Mhm.
That's definitely true. My only thing with that was I just thought, man, we're making steps forward in our progression, and bringing a guy like Ronaldo, in a sense, kind of brings us back. Just because like we need. I just am more enamored with the idea of um developing youth and talented youth than kind of getting a consistent results from a 30-year-old player, because it gets in the way of the future a little bit. Like it takes time, like Anthony Martial, for example, if you remember, um 2015, man, like Martial was top young player, golden boy, like candidate, I remember. And they bring in Zlatan, right? They bring in Zlatan, man, and Zlatan, great player for us. Similar thing, great player for us. I think even Marcel had to change his number because Zlatan came in, so Zlatan took number 9 or
Yeah,
something like.
it was a weird couple of weeks there. I remember that.
Yeah, so it was just like it kind of held it back a little bit. So it's you gotta. There's a bunch of variables to all this stuff. So as good as Zlatan was, and as good as Ronaldo was for us even last year, I just think sometimes you got to make way a little bit. You see some teams, they're understanding, like as great as Ronaldo is, as great as the numbers he'll provide us with. It's just we want to develop the younger guys, and if United were in a more stable condition, I'd say bring in Ronaldo to bring that and coexist with us. But we're not in that situation where we can just have Ronaldo just run the show. Even though he can, it's just like it's not winning us trophies. Ronaldo has to be a complementary to what we already have, but we don't have what it takes anymore. That's just being honest about it.
Well, yeah, no, I agree with that. I think he came at a weird time. I honestly thought his best move was originally, I mean, this is going back 4 years now, but he probably should have just stayed at Real Madrid and aged with everybody else there, because
Mhm.
Juventus sold him or was willing to sell him for similar reasons. Like when you commit that much wages to one guy, it just throws the structure off of trying to improve the squad around him. Um, and United doesn't really have that issue in the sense with the wages, but I mean, when you bring Ronaldo in, like, you're bringing in just a lot of attention. I mean, it's kind of like when you bring like LeBron into another team, right? Like he kind of is the guy that runs stuff, and like if you're not stable already, it's hard to bring in a guy like that. But one thing I will say, like I'm not as high as you were on their progression. I felt like you started to see some forward momentum, but I don't think it was great enough to the point where you could fully commit to it. Because I to be honest with you, like I don't like how they've developed players over the years. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I'm like, what player have they signed like in the last 4 or 5 years that has like noticeably gotten better since he's been at United? Like, there's marginal improvements here and there, but like what's one guy that they brought in that's immediately, or not immediately, but like at least in a couple of years taken big steps forward? Because when I look at kind of what Liverpool has done with with Robertson especially, but I mean even Trent, bringing him from the academy, like I just don't think they've developed players well.
Yep.
And I think that has to change for them to be successful. But when you look at like Wan Bissaka, or you could say Fred, but Fred's, I mean, I would say Fred has drastically improved since he's been here. Martial, is kind of hit and miss. Bruno's kind of, I mean, I would say he's gotten a little bit better, but I think what really hurt them was they found the one guy that they found that has developed pretty rapidly was Mason Greenwood. And that whole thing, I think that set them back 2 years, because if they had Greenwood last year, I'm not sure they would be as like, you know, super tempted to go get a Ronaldo, but they kind of had to, because Greenwood probably would have been that guy to play up front and score a lot of goals. I think that hurt them a lot, in the sense that like they just don't have another youth player right now that has taken those steps forward.
Yeah, that is a good point. I'm forgetting about Greenwood. Like Greenwood was a insane talent, honestly. I just, I definitely I can see what you're saying with the development. That's really important. United really don't see too much development. Back in the day, right? They have that class of, I think, 99 it was, with that youth that came in with Neville and Giggs and all those players. Like that's really when our youth was development was at its peak. I don't think it is the case anymore. I think they're more so focused on bringing proven players. That's why when they bought Fred, he was a proven player. 50 mil, that means like they're buying a proven player. Just in terms of being out of the team and coming back in the team, that's one guy I can think of. But outside of Fred, like there's not many that you can think of. Obviously, when they bought Pogba, they were expecting Pogba to reach new levels here. That didn't happen. So yeah, that's definitely a concern.
Sancho too. I thought they misused Sancho last year pretty badly, because like if you saw the year before when he was at Dortmund, and I get the Bundesliga is different and it's like more attack minded and stuff like that, but like he's a guy that if you play him in the proper position and you give him that freedom, which is what I hope Ten Hag does, but like he can be a guy that wins you a lot of games and is like one of your three best players. I just how they used him last year was pretty bad, and they really need to get a lot out of him this upcoming season if they're gonna have a chance to win, because they haven't won a trophy since Mourinho. And I mean, they finished second a couple times in the league, but I never thought it was like they've never been in a position where it was like coming down to the last 2 weeks and they're within like 4 points or 3 points of the title. And you're like, wow, they have a real shot at winning this. A lot of them have been like, they've been like 15 points behind and they get second, which is great, but like it was never like a competitive race at the top. So I think they have ways to go, but I do like a lot of their players. They're just like in a vacuum.
Mhm.
If you play FIFA especially, I mean, these guys have potential. It's just a matter of if they're used properly or not. And recently there's been no track record to suggest that will change. But with a new manager, you hope that it gets turned around pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I think stability is really important. Finding stable situations around these players can bring the best out of them. Luke Shaw and Mourinho, they had their situation. Then fast forward to Luke Shaw with Ole, and there was probably a point where people thought Luke Shaw was one of the best left backs in the world. I don't think that would be crazy to say, especially during that Euros run that he had. So I think stability is important. Definitely took a step back with that last year. I don't think anybody was going to adapt to Ralph Ranić. I always thought that was a temporary thing. I'm kind of glad that he's has no parts with the club at all. Just I didn't think it was going to be smart to bring in a consultant and have his say on with Ten Hag. I just thought Ten Hag needs to just run it his way, and I'm glad they made that move to get rid of him. But yeah, man, if stability comes our way, I think you could see good things out of Sancho. I even think you can see good things out of players that have fallen out a little bit, like Rashford. That'll be really important. But yeah, we're talking a little bit too much about United for a seventh place team.
No, it's good, man. I mean, United's United, even when they're bad, or like not even bad, but even when they're like below their standard, they still move the needle. I mean, you see those anytime a transfer thing gets posted, they get like double the retweets as any other thing. So it's big, man. They need to be good. It makes it more interesting.
That is true. I mean, you're seeing in this tour that they're going on right now that they have so many fans around the world, like Australia. Thailand. Like it's still a big club.